Hey guys, Brooke and Laura here for Legal Talk Tuesday, and we are going to talk this month a lot about divorce. June is the second most popular month for divorce. It's a weird way to say it, popular, but anyways, a lot of divorces happen in June, and a lot of people file in June. So what we typically think about divorce when we think about it is fighting, a long, drawn-out, expensive process, and we don't really think about it being amicable or anything peaceful. But it is possible to divorce more easily and agreeably. So you can kind of decide how you want to handle your divorce. Obviously, your spouse is going to determine a little bit of how your interactions will go. But we're here today to give you 5 tips to help you divorce more peacefully. The first thing we're going to talk about is blame. So marriages end for different reasons for different people. Sometimes things have happened. Sometimes you've just grown apart. But whatever the reason is, typically in divorce, emotions are going to run high. But you really need to avoid playing the blame game. So when you've reached the point that divorce is inevitable and you're moving forward, it's really pointless and unproductive to assign blame to one another. Obviously, internally, you're going to have your thoughts, opinions, driving motivations, but externally, you really should avoid blaming one another, because if you're stuck focusing on why you got to this point and everything in the past, it's going to be very difficult for you to divorce peacefully and achieve a good outcome that you're comfortable with.
Exactly. And to go along kind of with that, step number 2 or tip number 2 is stay out of the weeds. And if anyone listening today or later in the week has ever worked in food service as a server or in management or cooking, whatever that means, or whatever kind of role you had, you know what the weeds means. I, put myself through school, and I know Brooke did too, did a lot of waitressing in the past. And when you're in the weeds, that means that you are just frantic. You're trying to catch up with things. But it also, I want you to think about it in a way that don't get hung up on the tiny little things. So sometimes when people are getting divorced, that's what kind of gets stuck in their craw, and they really only focus on those tiny little things. Doesn't mean that if it's important to you that you shouldn't address that issue and figure out what works for both you and your spouse. If you have kids, your kids. But it really is important to focus on the big picture, the overall goal. And the overall goal is, to divorce, but hopefully not hate each other forever, especially if you have children. That's a tip later. But negotiating on the big things versus the small things will save you a ton of time and a ton of money and a lot of heartbreak and ill feelings, bad feelings, not just about your spouse, but also just the whole process and everything involved. So focus on what's really important to you, that big picture, the non-negotiable stuff. And when you're talking about negotiating, really every little tiny thing that you, especially if an attorney is involved, in a full service capacity, those tiny little things that you're going back and forth on, it's costly. It's not pretty. It takes a long time. So keep that in mind. No one wins in a divorce. Both Brooke and I have practiced family law for a very long time and done a lot of divorces, helped people with a lot of divorces in both court, and also doing what we're doing now is helping people represent themselves in court. And no one wins in a divorce. So keep that in mind. But focusing on the important things instead of those tiny little things will, give you a better chance of being happy or at least okay with the results and remaining more civil with your spouse during the whole process.
Right. And to follow that up, being civil, one of the hottest points, I guess, hottest contested points in a divorce is money. And so many times when you're going through a divorce, there's an imbalance in finances, meaning that one party typically makes more money than the other. So, and sometimes it's not necessarily that one makes more money, because this can be the same person and it may not be, but it also can be that one party is more informed and keeps up with the bills and knows all of the financial obligations, debts, assets, things that you own. And so negotiate honestly. Don't hide things or stretch the truth. That's terrible for you, especially. But when it comes to money, you should definitely be forthcoming with information, be cooperative with the process. Here in Arkansas, you have to file, when you file for divorce, you do have to fill out an affidavit of financial means. And what that is a document where you list things out. It's very helpful too when you're going through the process too. So, if you're not thinking about something, it'll help you kind of trigger that. But you list out all the things you owe, all the things you own, and what that looks like. So that way you can divide that up and negotiate with that. You may still kind of squabble a little bit about child support or division of debt. I mean, that's to be expected. And there are things that you may want, but if you're being deceptive or kind of shady about it, then that's going to break trust, not only in that area, but in regard to other negotiations with your children, and other important things in your divorce. So it's going to be extremely difficult in the process to divorce peacefully once you've had that trust broken. So just be honest and forthright when you're talking about money.
Step number 4, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with children, being civil and that kind of thing that Brooke also mentioned. If you have children and you're getting a divorce, for those of you that have watched our show, our lives in the past, you know that kids are the most important thing to me, and they're the most important thing to the court, and they should be the most important thing to you when you're getting that divorce. Put their needs first all of the time, not some of the time, all the time. The court really honestly only cares about the children in the divorce. They care about the spouses, and they'll, help, do things with money and things like that, kind of like what Brooke mentioned. But the most important thing to the courts, and what should be the most important thing to you, is your children and the children's best interest. That's a phrase that you'll hear in court documents and things like that. It's the best interest of the children. And that's how you should approach your divorce. You and your spouse are not the only ones who are going through the divorce. So staying focused on your children helps you, it helps, encourage you to not, be a jerk, basically, to avoid those bad behaviors that are going to be really destructive to your family. And so if you avoid those and you keep the children's best interest in mind, that's going to set you up for that, not only that peaceful divorce, but a successful co-parenting relationship after the divorce, because you're still going to have to deal with that person forever, not just until your children are 18. So, the more that you can put the children in the forefront of your mind, the better it is overall.
Absolutely. And the 5th and final step, key tip, whatever, is that, don't wait until an attorney is involved or you're actually in the court to work through the terms of your divorce. It's best if you can actually divorce on your own terms, and even if you're giving a little, but you want to try to settle as much as possible prior to the divorce, and do so respectfully. So, there are alternative ways that, you see divorce portrayed one way, but on TV and in movies, but there are alternative ways to get a divorce. So not everything has to be a big courtroom drama. And it's better and actually less costly in the long run if you can avoid that for everyone involved. So there are different ways that you can achieve this. One way is mediation. Mediation, you go into a neutral environment. There is a neutral person there that is going to help you kind of work through some of your issues. You may come to the table and have things that you've already worked out among yourself, and there are just some, non-negotiables that you need to get past that you're blocked on, and the mediator can help you work through that. And then you can come to an agreement on your terms in the end and submit that to the court, and the court can review that and order it as you've agreed to in mediation. Another way that you can do this is collaborative divorce. It's similar to mediation, except both people have an attorney on each side that goes in with the goal of coming to an agreement. In mediation, you go in, if you don't come to an agreement, it's not required, you can go on just like you see on TV and fight it out. In a collaborative divorce, the goal is agreement. And if you don't come to an agreement, you actually have to leave those attorneys behind and go start all over again with new attorneys. So it gives you a little bit of incentive to be able to come to an agreement. But you can also come to an agreement on your own. We work with a lot of people who have already sat down and taken the steps, worked through some of the things that we talked about in the first step 1 through 4, and come to agreements with their spouse and decided, they wanted a divorce on their own terms. Those are the people that we help for the most part. Obviously, we can, provide some strategy and advice, but the more that you can agree on your own, the more it stays on your terms. And then you can bring it to us and we can help you actually create the legal documents that you're going to need and help you navigate the process on your own. So there's some different alternatives to consider whenever you are thinking about or going through a divorce.
Exactly. So just to wrap things up for today, divorce, by its nature, can get kind of heated. It's not necessarily a happy situation that you've decided to separate from your spouse. So doing these things that we talked about today, they're key in order to make your divorce amicable and agreeable, and both parties, whether or not each person is happy at the end. Happiness doesn't always happen at the end, but at least you are okay with the way things have gone, the way things ended, and follow those steps in order to give yourself a better chance to have it be a good process. So thank you so much for joining us today. Join us next week on Tuesday at 11:30, and we'll give you some more interesting tidbits probably on the divorce process and how that works here in Arkansas. So thanks so much. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys.